My name is Madison Carter. I'm 29 years old. Last week, my entire life changed in ways I could never have imagined. My uncle, Henry Carter, the man who raised me when no one else would, passed away and left me his entire estate. A Napa Valley vineyard worth over $5 million, the mansion that sits on the hillside in full control of his company. But just as the lawyer began to read the will, the doors opened. And there they were. My parents. The same people who abandoned me at a Chicago train station when I was just 12 years old. They walked in, smiling as if 17 years of silence meant nothing. And then my mother said the words that made my blood run cold. "We are still your parents. That means everything here belongs to us, too." In that moment I realized, this wasn't going to be about grief or even about inheritance. This was going to be a war. A war not for money but for the truth about what family really means. I froze in my chair, my heartbeat pounding louder than the ticking clock on the lawyer's wall. For 17 years I had dreamed of this moment, seeing them again. Sometimes I imagined running into their arms, finally getting the explanation I deserved. Other times I saw myself screaming, demanding answers for every sleepless night they caused. But now here they were. In the flesh. My father had aged beyond recognition. His once strong frame was bloated and tired, his shoulders hunched forward as though life itself had beaten him down. My mother, thinner than I remembered, wore a forced smile that didn't reach her hollow eyes. The air in the room thickened as they moved closer, their footsteps echoing against the hardwood floor. "Sweetheart," my mother whispered, her voice trembling in that rehearsed way, "you've grown into such a beautiful woman." I stood but my legs betrayed me. I didn't move toward her. Instead I clenched the arms of my chair, nails digging into the leather. "Sit down, Mrs. Carter." "Mr. Carter," the lawyer, Mr. Whitman, said firmly. His calm voice cut through the tension, but I noticed the quick flash of irritation on his face. Clearly their arrival was unexpected. They took their seats across from me like strangers pretending to be family. My father leaned forward, forcing a smile. "We heard about Henry. We came as soon as we could. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." Alone? My chest tightened with rage. Alone was all I had ever been because of them. Mr. Whitman cleared his throat and opened the folder on his desk. "Let's continue. According to Henry Carter's last will and testament, all assets, including the vineyard estate, the residence in Napa Valley, the associated business and all financial accounts, are hereby transferred in full to his niece, Madison Carter." The words felt surreal. Even though I had known Henry's intentions, hearing it out loud made my hands tremble. I was the sole heir. His life's work, his empire, now rested in my hands. The room fell silent until my father coughed. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound casual. "But surely, there must be some oversight. We are Madison's parents. By law that makes us her guardians. And guardians manage their children's estates." My head snapped toward him. Guardians? I was 29 years old. No one had been my guardian for almost 2 decades. Whitman's face remained unreadable but his tone sharpened. "Mr. Carter, that is not how the law works. Your daughter has been an adult for 11 years. The estate is hers alone." My mother reached across the table, her cold fingers brushing against my hand. I flinched. "We don't want to fight you, honey. We only want to help. Managing this kind of money, this kind of responsibility, it's overwhelming. You're young. We're your family. We can guide you." The word family sliced through me like broken glass. I pulled my hand back, my voice shaking but steady enough. "You lost the right to call yourself my family the day you left me on that train platform." Her smile cracked, revealing something desperate beneath. My father's jaw tightened. "That's not fair, Madison. You don't understand the sacrifices we had to make. The people we owed money to, dangerous people. We left to protect you." "Protect me?" My stomach churned. Before I could respond, Whitman closed the file with a decisive snap. "This conversation is no longer about Henry's estate. It's about boundaries. And let me be perfectly clear. This inheritance belongs solely to Madison. Any attempt to contest it will be met with the full weight of the legal system." Henry anticipated situations like this. My parents exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. My father leaned back, feigning calm, but I saw the hunger in his eyes. My mother dabbed fake tears with a tissue, murmuring about lost years and second chances. And then, as if their masks slipped all at once, my father said flatly, "You can't handle this estate alone. Sooner or later you'll need us. We're not leaving empty-handed." The words hit me like a slap. There it was, the truth behind their return. Not love. Not guilt. Not regret. Money. My pulse hammered in my ears. For years I had prayed for their return, for any sign that they cared. Now I realized they only cared about what I had, not who I was. And in that moment I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let them take from me the one thing Henry gave me that they never could: security, stability, and the truth about what family really means. When the meeting ended, I gathered my things with shaking hands. My parents lingered by the door, their lawyer whispering something hurriedly into my father's ear. I wanted to disappear, to run back to Napa and lock the gates behind me. But Whitman placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Madison, remember, Henry left everything in order. You're protected. Don't let their noise shake you." I nodded, though my stomach still twisted into knots. As I stepped out into the crisp San Francisco air, the cool breeze hit me like a splash of cold water. For a moment I breathed, trying to steady myself. But then I heard it, my mother's voice behind me. "Madison, wait." I turned. They were already outside, their lawyer a few steps behind. My father's expression was softer now, almost pleading, but it was the kind of softness that comes with calculation. "Can we talk privately? Just the three of us?" he asked. I shook my head. "There's nothing left to say." My mother moved closer, lowering her voice as if whispering a secret only I should hear. "If you refuse to work with us, people are going to get hurt. You don't know the kinds of debts your father still has. Dangerous people. Men who won't hesitate to come after you too." Her words sliced through the air. My pulse spiked. "Is that a threat?" I demanded. "No," my father interjected quickly, raising his hands. "It's a warning. We can protect you, Madison. We've dealt with these people before. But we need access to the estate to make things right." It was like watching a play, good cop, bad cop, except both roles were scripted in desperation. I stepped back, my voice trembling but loud enough for every passerby on the street to hear. "You abandoned me once to save yourselves. Don't you dare stand here now and pretend you're protecting me." My father's jaw twitched. He leaned closer, his tone dropping. "You think the law can shield you? Lawyers don't stop bullets. You're walking around with millions tied to your name. That makes you a target." Whitman, who had just stepped outside, caught the tail end of his words. His eyes narrowed as he positioned himself between us. "That's enough. Madison, get in your car. I'll handle this." But I couldn't move. My legs felt rooted, my mind spinning. Was this real? Were they bluffing? Or had my inheritance painted a target on my back? My mother reached out, her manicured nails catching my wrist. "We don't want to fight you, sweetheart. Just think about it. $100,000. That's all we need. Pay off the debts and we'll disappear. You'll never hear from us again." 100,000. A number for my silence, for my peace. I yanked my wrist free. "You think you can buy back 17 years with a number? You think money erases trauma? You taught me what abandonment feels like. Henry taught me what family really means. Guess which lesson I'll never forget." Her face crumpled. My father's eyes, however, hardened into something darker. His lawyer tugged his sleeve, murmuring about better strategies, and "not here, not now." Still, as they turned to leave, my father leaned in close enough for only me to hear. "This isn't over. One way or another, Madison, you'll pay." I stood frozen on the sidewalk, every instinct screaming danger. But beneath the fear, a spark ignited in me. They thought they could manipulate me, scare me, bend me into submission. They had no idea who Henry raised. The next morning I woke up in Napa Valley, surrounded by the silence of Henry's vineyard. The golden sun spilled across the hills, but the beauty of the landscape did nothing to calm the storm inside me. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls from an unknown number, voicemails I refused to listen to. I thought maybe if I ignored them they'd give up. But then the letter came. Delivered by courier, sealed in a heavy envelope. Inside, a notice of legal action. My parents had filed a petition in family court claiming they were my rightful guardians, arguing that my adoption by Henry was never properly finalized. I stared at the papers, my hands trembling. Guardianship? Adoption? I was 29 years old. How could they twist the law like this? I called Whitman immediately. His sigh on the other end of the line was heavy. They're trying to create confusion, Madison. It won't hold in court, but it can drag you through weeks of hearings. That's their strategy, exhaust you. Break you down until you agree to settle. Give them money just to make them disappear. I hung up, pacing the wide marble floor of the mansion. My chest felt tight, my thoughts colliding. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Against my better judgment, I played it. A man's voice, deep and cold. Miss Carter, your parents tell me you're a reasonable woman. They owe me money. Big money. If you don't want their debt to become your problem, I suggest you call me back. Soon. The line went dead. I froze. It wasn't just legal games anymore. They had dragged dangerous people into my life. That evening, as I drove back from a meeting at the Vineyard office, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. Too close. Too aggressive. The car followed me for miles down the winding country road. My palms slicked with sweat as I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Finally, I swerved into the long driveway of the estate, hitting the remote for the iron gates. They closed just as the car slowed at the entrance, pausing long enough for me to catch a glimpse of the driver. A man I didn't recognize, staring at me with a smile that didn't belong on any friendly face. I ran inside, locking every door, my heart racing. On the kitchen counter lay Henry's leather-bound notebook, the one he had always carried during business meetings. For the first time since his death, I opened it. Inside were notes, contacts, even contingency plans he had drafted in case family ever tried to interfere. Henry had known this day might come. One sentence jumped off the page. When they play dirty, fight smarter. The vineyard is more than grapes. It's protection if you know how to use it. I didn't understand what he meant yet. But one thing was clear. My parents had set their first trap. Legal tricks on one side, dangerous threats on the other. And if I wasn't careful, they'd drag me under. But I wasn't that scared 12-year-old girl anymore. Henry raced me to be stronger. And for the first time I felt something new rising inside me. Not just fear but fire. I didn't sleep that night. The Vineyard mansion was quiet, but inside my chest my heart refused to calm. Every shadow outside the tall windows looked like a threat. Every creak of the wooden beams sounded like footsteps. By dawn I sat at the long oak table in the study, Henry's leather notebook open in front of me. His handwriting was neat, deliberate, the same way he lived his life. Most pages were filled with vineyard records, business strategies, vendor lists. But halfway through I found something different. A section titled, Contingency, in case of family interference. My breath caught. Henry had known. Maybe not the exact timing, but he had always anticipated my parents might crawl back. The first page listed attorneys on retainer, investigators he trusted, even a contact in law enforcement who owed him favors. But the second page was stranger. Numbers, codes, and a line that read, Assets are leverage. Paper trails are weapons. Truth must always be documented. I flipped the page and found a thin envelope taped inside. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside were photocopies of wire transfers, payments Henry had made nearly 15 years ago. Each one tied to my father's name. Each one labeled, Settlement to Prevent Interference. And then, scans of letters. Threatening letters. My father's handwriting, demanding money in exchange for not contesting custody. My mother's notes, pretending to be sick, asking for emergency funds to rebuild her life. Henry had saved everything. It was like discovering a vault of loaded ammunition. Not bullets but truth. Then I found the last page, scrawled in darker ink as if written during his illness. If they ever return, Madison must know. The vineyard is clean. Their past is dirty. Protect her by exposing them. Talk to Whitman. He has the originals. My pulse surged with a mix of grief and relief. Henry hadn't just raised me. He had shielded me from their poison, all while preparing me for this exact moment. I slammed the notebook shut, adrenaline rushing through me. For the first time since their reappearance, I didn't feel cornered. I felt armed. Later that afternoon I met Whitman in his office. I placed the copies on his desk. His eyes widened and then he gave a grim smile. So, Henry finally let you in on his secret archive. I wondered when you'd find it. You mean there's more? I asked. Whitman nodded. He opened his drawer and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the desk. These are the originals. He instructed me to hold them until you were ready. Ready doesn't mean old enough, Madison, it means strong enough. Inside the folder were signed affidavits, court records, and even private investigator reports documenting my parents' schemes for nearly 2 decades. Every time they tried to worm their way back, Henry had built a case. I stared at the mountain of evidence, anger and vindication coursing through me. This destroys them, I whispered. Whitman leaned forward, his voice steady but intense. Yes. But it also protects you. Use it wisely. If they keep pushing, we file counterclaims. Fraud, extortion, abandonment. A judge won't just dismiss their petition, they could face charges. For the first time, the balance of power shifted in my mind. They weren't predators circling me anymore. They were prey. As I left Whitman's office, the sun dipped behind the San Francisco skyline. My phone buzzed with another blocked call. I let it ring. Because now I wasn't running. Now I was ready to fight. The following week, the courtroom smelled of old wood and tension. My parents had pushed forward with their petition, demanding to be recognized as my legal guardians, despite the absurdity of it all. Their attorney strutted in confidently, his briefcase packed like he was about to win the case of his life. I sat quietly at the table beside Whitman. My heart pounded, but my hands didn't shake this time. Because now I wasn't here to beg for protection. I was here to fight. The judge, a stern woman with sharp glasses, called the session to order. My father was the first to speak, his voice rehearsed, smooth as a salesman's pitch. Your Honor, my wife and I have endured many struggles. We admit we made mistakes, but we are Madison's biological parents. We have a right, no, a duty, to ensure her inheritance is properly managed. She is young, inexperienced, and vulnerable to manipulation. We only want what's best for her. I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. What's best for me? They left me at a train station with nothing but fear and a note. The judge turned to Whitman. Counselor, how do you respond? Whitman stood calm as ever. Your Honor, my client is 29 years old. She has managed the vineyard business successfully for years under the mentorship of Henry Carter. But more importantly, he placed a thick folder on the judge's bench. We have evidence that the petitioners abandoned Madison as a child and later attempted to extort money from both Henry Carter and Madison herself. This is not a matter of guardianship. This is a matter of exploitation. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My parents' attorney stiffened. The judge flipped through the folder, her eyebrows arching higher with each page. Whitman continued. These are letters written by Mr. and Mrs. Carter, demanding financial payments in exchange for silence. Here are wire transfers to Mr. Carter's personal accounts, marked as settlements. And here, he lifted a stack of photographs. Are private investigator reports, showing the petitioners gambling in Nevada while claiming to be destitute, even approaching other families under false pretenses. My mother's face drained of color. My father's jaw clenched, his fists tightening on the table. The judge looked over her glasses at them. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, do you deny these documents? Their lawyer scrambled. These could have been fabricated. We haven't had time to. They are notarized and time-stamped, Whitman interrupted, his tone like a hammer. And if the court wishes, we can subpoena the banks to confirm every transaction. The silence that followed was deafening. I finally spoke, my voice clear, steady. Your Honor, they didn't come back for me. They came back for money. For 17 years I was nothing to them. And now that Henry is gone, suddenly I'm their daughter again? Blood may connect us, but family is proven by actions. And their actions have always been abandonment, manipulation, and greed. The judge studied me for a long moment, then turned to my parents. I suggest you withdraw this petition immediately. Otherwise, you may find yourselves facing charges far more serious than a civil dispute. My mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing. My father muttered something under his breath, but their lawyer quickly rose. Your Honor, my clients will reconsider their petition. The gavel hit the bench with a sharp crack. Case dismissed. I exhaled, a wave of relief washing over me. For the first time I wasn't just defending myself, I was standing tall, turning their weapons back on them. As we left the courthouse, my father brushed past me, his voice low and venomous. You think you've won? You don't know the people we owe. They'll come for you too. But I didn't flinch this time. I looked him straight in the eye. Let them try. I'm not the little girl you left behind anymore. And Henry didn't just leave me money, he left me a way to fight. His face darkened, but he said nothing more. The war wasn't over. I could feel it in my bones. But for the first time, the battlefield wasn't theirs. It was mine. The courtroom victory should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like lighting a fuse. 2 nights later, I returned to the vineyard after a late board meeting. The estate gates were locked as usual, the vines whispering under the moonlight. But something was wrong. The porch light, which I always left on, was out. My chest tightened. I parked, gripping the steering wheel, watching the silent mansion. Then I saw it, spray-painted in dripping red letters across the front gate. Pay what they owe. Or else. My stomach dropped. I ran inside, locking the door behind me, and immediately called Whitman. He urged me to stay calm, to document everything. "We'll contact the sheriff in the morning," he said. But morning felt too far away. Because as I moved through the house, I realized I wasn't alone. A faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered in the air. And on the kitchen counter, where I had left Henry's notebook, there was now a single playing card. The Queen of Spades. A calling card. I stumbled back, heart racing, scanning every shadow. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Miss Carter," a gravelly voice said, calm and deliberate. "Your parents owe me $200,000. But lucky you, debts are transferable. Pay up or you'll learn how fragile those vineyard walls really are." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "I'm the man who doesn't ask twice." The line went dead. That night, I barely slept, sitting upright on the velvet couch with every light in the house blazing. Every noise outside made me jump. By morning, the sheriff's deputy confirmed forced entry signs at the gate. But no fingerprints, no cameras catching faces. "Could be bluff," he muttered. But I wouldn't take chances. These vineyard estates? Easy targets. Too much land, too many hiding places. My fear hardened into resolve. Later that day, Whitman arrived with another envelope. Inside were more of Henry's files, this time about people. Shady business associates. Debt collectors. Names Henry had tracked because he knew my parents' addictions would eventually bleed into his world. And then I saw it. A name circled 3 times in Henry's handwriting. Victor Hale. A man once tied to underground casinos in Reno. Dangerous, ruthless, the kind of man who never forgot a debt. I realized with a chill that the voice on the phone, the man behind the Queen of Spades, was Victor. And he didn't want my parents anymore. He wanted me. As the sun set, I stood on the balcony overlooking the endless rows of vines Henry had built from the ground up. For the first time, I felt the weight of it all pressing down. Not just the inheritance, but the danger that came with it. I whispered to myself as if Henry could still hear, "You raised me to fight smarter. So that's what I'll do." Because if Victor Hale thought I was just another scared heiress waiting to be shaken down, he was about to learn who Madison Carter really was. It started with fire. 2 nights after the Queen of Spades appeared in my kitchen, I was woken by the acrid smell of smoke. I bolted upright, racing to the window overlooking the vineyard. Flames licked through the edge of the east field, rows of Henry's precious vines set ablaze. By the time the fire department arrived, nearly an acre was gone. The firefighters told me it was suspicious, almost certainly arson. On the charred soil, investigators found another card. This time the Jack of Spades. Victor was escalating. The next morning, fear spread through my employees like wildfire of its own. Jose, the foreman who had worked with Henry for 20 years, stormed into my office. "Miss Carter, my men won't stay if they think their families are in danger. Someone slashed the tires on the delivery truck last night. And one of my workers, Miguel, found a note on his porch. It said, 'Quit or bleed.'" His voice shook with anger, but underneath I heard terror. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about me anymore. Victor was dragging innocent people into his game. I clenched my fist. "Tell your men I'll protect them. No one leaves. Not like this." But as soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how hollow they sounded. How could I protect anyone when I couldn't even protect myself? That afternoon, while I was in the office reviewing security footage, the power suddenly cut out. The cameras went black. Then came the sound. A loud crash from outside. I ran to the window just in time to see the greenhouse windows shatter, rocks flying through the glass. The vandals were masked, fast, gone before I could even scream. By the time the sheriff arrived, they had vanished, leaving behind only another playing card. This time the king of spades, taped to the broken door. A sick pattern was forming. King. He was playing through the deck one card at a time, and I knew what was coming next. The ace. And the ace would be me. That night I sat alone in Henry's study, staring at the security monitors as technicians worked to bring them back online. My reflection in the glass looked pale, haunted, but behind my eyes was something new. Fire. I whispered into the silence, my voice steady despite the fear curling in my gut. You want a game, Victor? Fine. But this is my house, my vineyard, my legacy. And if you think you can burn it down to break me, you'll learn the hard way what Henry taught me. I don't fold. I fight. The battle was no longer about money. It was survival. And for the first time I was ready to strike back. Thought I was prepared. I thought Henry's files, Whitman's support, and my own determination would be enough to stand against Victor Hale. I was wrong. It happened on a Friday evening. The vineyard was bustling. Bottling season always was. Jose's crew worked late, laughter and music drifting from the warehouse as the last cases were sealed. For a brief moment I allowed myself to breathe. Then the lights cut out. The entire estate went black, plunging us into silence broken only by the hum of cooling machines grinding to a stop. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photo. My stomach dropped. It was Miguel, one of our youngest workers, tied to a chair in the back of what looked like the delivery truck. His face was bloodied, but his eyes were wide open, terrified. The next text came seconds later. The ace is next. Midnight. Bring $200,000 cash. Come alone. Or he bleeds. My chest tightened, every nerve in my body screaming. The ace. It wasn't just me. Victor had turned one of my people into leverage. Before I could think, Jose burst into my office, panic on his face. Madison, Miguel is gone. He never made it back from the warehouse. I showed him the photo. His knees buckled. Dios mío. Whitman was on the phone within minutes, urging me to call the sheriff, the FBI, anyone. But my father's words echoed in my head. Lawyers don't stop bullets. And Victor wasn't bluffing anymore. I had two choices. Wait for law enforcement to stumble in too late, or take back control the way Henry had taught me. Smarter, sharper, and on my own terms. I opened Henry's notebook again, desperate for guidance. And there it was, scrawled in the margin like a whisper from the grave. Power is never in the money, it's in the leverage. Never show up blind. I knew what I had to do. At 11:30 p.m. I pulled the Range Rover out of the driveway, a duffel bag in the back. But it wasn't filled with cash. It was stuffed with vineyard tools, chains, and one of Henry's old surveillance drones I had found in the shed. As I approached the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Napa, I killed the headlights. My pulse hammered as I sent the drone ahead, its tiny camera streaming live to my phone. Inside I saw them, Victor, tall and broad, his face carved with cruelty, pacing around Miguel, who was still tied to the chair. Two masked men stood nearby, armed with bats and knives. And then chillingly I saw them. My parents. Not tied. Not threatened. Standing beside Victor. My breath caught like ice in my lungs. It hadn't just been desperation, it had been a partnership all along. They had delivered me straight into Victor's hands. I gripped the steering wheel, every ounce of fear boiling into fury. Henry had raced me to survive betrayal. And tonight survival meant war. I checked the time. 11:58. 2 minutes until midnight. 2 minutes until Victor expected me to walk in helpless. But I wasn't walking in helpless. I was walking in armed, with truth, with Henry's preparation, and with nothing left to lose. The clock on my dashboard ticked over to midnight. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. The abandoned warehouse loomed ahead like a beast waiting to devour me. I stepped out of the SUV, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, phone in my pocket streaming the live drone feed. Every nerve in my body screamed to run. But I forced myself forward. The warehouse door screeched as I pulled it open. Inside, the air reeked of gasoline and sweat. The dim glow of a single hanging bulb swung overhead, casting long, jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Victor Hale stood in the center, his massive arms folded. Miguel was still tied to the chair, bruised but alive. Two masked men hovered nearby, gripping weapons. And there, off to the side, were my parents. My mother's face lit up as if she were greeting an old friend. "Madison," she whispered, her voice syrupy sweet. "You came." My father's smirk twisted into something feral. "We knew you wouldn't abandon us. Not like we had to with you." The words sliced into me, but I didn't flinch. Victor stepped forward, his boots echoing against the floor. "You brought the money?" I dropped the duffel bag onto the ground with a heavy thud. 200,000. Just like you asked. He crouched, unzipping it. Chains, vineyard tools, and Henry's drone parts clattered onto the floor. His head snapped up, fury igniting in his eyes. "This isn't money," he growled. "No," I said, my voice steady. "It's leverage." At that moment my phone buzzed in my pocket. I tapped the screen, sending the drone's live footage directly to Whitman, the sheriff, and half the board of Henry's company. Every threat, every face, every piece of evidence was already streaming out of this warehouse. Victor's men shifted uncomfortably, realizing the trap. My father barked, "She's bluffing. She always was weak." I turned to him, my voice cutting like glass. "Weak? I was 12 years old when you left me. And I still survived. Henry taught me strength isn't in walking away. It's in staying and fighting." For the first time my mother's smile faltered. Victor snarled, pulling a knife from his belt. "You think exposing me matters? Money buys silence. Money buys freedom. What do you have, little girl?" I took a step closer, my heart pounding like thunder. "I have the one thing you'll never understand: legacy. Henry didn't just leave me money. He left me proof. He knew men like you would come. And now your face, your threats, they're all recorded. You're already finished." Victor lunged, knife raised. Time slowed. My pulse roared in my ears. I grabbed one of the heavy vineyard chains from the floor, swinging with every ounce of strength. The chain struck his arm, the knife clattering to the ground. Miguel shouted through his gag. Chaos erupted. One masked man rushed me. I ducked, slamming the chain into his knee. He collapsed with a howl. The other grabbed me from behind, but before he could tighten his grip, the drone swooped low, its propellers slicing into his face. He screamed, stumbling back. And then came the sirens. Red and blue lights flooded through the cracks in the warehouse walls. The sheriff's deputies poured in, guns drawn. Victor roared like a caged animal, but with 3 officers tackling him to the ground, the fight was over. My parents stood frozen, their faces pale as officers cuffed them too, on charges of conspiracy and aiding extortion. I stumbled toward Miguel, tearing the ropes from his wrists. His voice cracked. "Señorita, you saved me." But all I could hear was Henry's voice in my memory. "Power is never in the money, it's in the leverage." As the deputies dragged Victor and my parents away, my father locked eyes with me, spitting words through clenched teeth. "You think this is victory? You'll regret choosing strangers over blood." I met his gaze, steady, unblinking. Blood abandoned me. Family stayed. The doors of the warehouse slammed shut behind them, the echoes fading into the night. And for the first time in 17 years I wasn't running anymore. I had fought. And I had won. The warehouse was silent now, emptied of chaos. Only the smell of smoke, gasoline, and fear lingered in the air. Deputies escorted Victor and his men into waiting squad cars. My parents followed, handcuffed, their faces drained of color. I stood in the doorway, breathing hard, my clothes torn, my arms still trembling from the fight. The night air hit me like a cold wave, but for the first time in years I wasn't drowning. I was free. Miguel was rushed to the hospital with only minor injuries. When the deputies thanked me for my bravery, I barely heard them. My mind was somewhere else. Back to Henry's study, back to his words written in that notebook. Power is never in the money, it's in the leverage. He had prepared me for this moment, even if he never lived to see it. The following days blurred together. Court hearings. Police reports. Endless paperwork. Victor Hale was charged with extortion, arson, and kidnapping. My parents, my own flesh and blood, were indicted for conspiracy and fraud. The tabloids ran wild. Vineyard heiress betrayed by parents. Reporters swarmed the estate gates, desperate for a statement. I gave them none. Because no headline could capture what it felt like to bury the fantasy of reconciliation forever. At night, the silence of the mansion was heavier than ever. I'd walk past Henry's office, half expecting him to still be there, scribbling notes with a glass of Cabernet by his side. Sometimes I swore I could hear his voice, steady, unyielding, reminding me to stand tall. But grief no longer hollowed me out. It shaped me. 1 week later, I called a staff meeting at the vineyard. My employees gathered nervously, unsure if the business would survive the fire, the rumors, the fear. I looked at their faces. Faces that had worked for Henry, faces that had trusted him and now looked to me. I cleared my throat. My voice wavered at first, then steadied. Henry built this vineyard from nothing. He faced storms, droughts, and betrayal. And he taught me one thing: you don't give up on what matters. Not for money. Not for fear. And definitely not for people who see family as a transaction. I paused, meeting Jose's eyes, then Miguel's, who had returned with bandages but insisted on standing with us. This vineyard isn't just land or grapes. It's legacy. It's proof that love is shown through action. Day after day, season after season. That's the family Henry gave me. And that's the family we'll continue to be. For the first time since his funeral, I saw smiles. Tentative but real. The fear in the room loosened its grip, replaced by something sturdier. Hope. In the weeks that followed, I hired private security, rebuilt the scorched rows of vines, and poured money into expanding the business online. The vineyard didn't just survive. It thrived. But my greatest decision wasn't business. It was personal. I took part of the inheritance and founded the Carter Foundation for Abandoned Youth, a nonprofit providing housing, therapy, and scholarships for kids left behind, just like I once was. Every letter from a child we helped, every story of survival, stitched another tear in the fabric of my heart. Because Henry hadn't just left me wealth. He left me a blueprint for turning pain into purpose. Months later, I visited his grave. The headstone gleamed under the California sun, engraved with his name and the simple words: Builder, Guardian, Father. I placed my hand on the cool stone and whispered, "We won, Henry. You me." We turned their fire into fuel. And now I'll carry this legacy forward. A breeze swept through the vineyard trees, gentle and warm, as if he were answering back. I walked away lighter, not because the past had disappeared, but because it had finally found its place behind me. Family had abandoned me. But family had also saved me. And now it was my turn to save others. The vineyard was quiet at dusk, bathed in soft gold from the setting sun. For the first time in months, the air felt calm. No fires, no shouts, no threats. Just silence. That evening, while going through Henry's study one last time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Beneath the bottom drawer of his old oak desk, a small panel was loose. With trembling fingers, I pried it open. Inside was a wooden box, polished, heavy, and carved with Henry's initials. My chest tightened as I lifted it out, almost afraid to open it. When I finally did, I found a stack of documents carefully tied with ribbon. They were adoption papers. My adoption papers. Legal, binding, signed nearly 2 decades ago. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Tears blurred my vision. For so many years I had wondered if I truly belonged to anyone. And here it was, proof that Henry hadn't just raised me out of obligation. He had chosen me. Beneath the papers was a sealed envelope with my name written in his familiar handwriting. Madison. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Asterisk, my dearest Madison. If you are reading this, then my time with you has ended. I want you to know something I may not have said enough. You were the daughter I never had but always dreamed of. Remember this. True wealth is not measured in money, land, or vineyards. True wealth is integrity, the courage to stand by what is right, and the love we give without expecting anything in return. Carry this truth with you, Madison. Let it guide you when the world turns cruel. And never doubt that you were my greatest legacy. The words swam as tears streamed down my cheeks. I clutched the letter to my chest, sinking into Henry's old leather chair, sobbing like the 12-year-old girl he once rescued. For the first time since his passing, my grief wasn't sharp, it was warm. I could feel him here, not in the house, not in the vineyard, but in me. I walked outside into the twilight, the letter still in my hand. The vineyard stretched endlessly before me, rows of vines swaying gently in the evening breeze. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." The wind carried the words across the valley as if delivering them to him. And in that moment I knew. My fight was no longer just about surviving or protecting an inheritance. It was about honoring Henry's love, by living with integrity, by leading with compassion, and by giving others the second chance he once gave me. That was the true legacy. Fade to black. The vineyard stood quiet under the first light of dawn. Mist rolled gently between the vines, carrying with it the weight of everything that had been lost, and everything that had been gained. Madison finally understood. Family is not written in blood. It is written in actions, consistency, sacrifice, and love lived out every single day. Henry had chosen her when no one else would. Through his words, his sacrifices, and his final letter, he reminded her that true wealth is not measured in money or power, but in integrity and love. Toxic voices had tried to define her worth. But now Madison stood free. She carried not the shame of betrayal but the strength of choice, the choice to build her own legacy rooted in truth, not greed. And as the sun rose above the vineyard, one question remained. Do blood ties deserve automatic forgiveness? Or must family be proven through their actions? True wealth is not money but integrity and love. Backhand index pointing right. Share your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that challenge what family really means.